I think I'll do a brain 3. I don't know if there's much to add except to make clarifications and maybe deal with some comments and chicky poo. Yeah, yeah, really quite nice. Anyway, yeah. So yes, the modern mystic did some sort of thing down here. Voices in the head, words and numbers are both exclusive reserves of consciousness. Yeah, I just don't see that one at all. So here's his schematic. And I've drawn pictures like this before. This is even more simple, except now it's all square and have exact lines, but really doesn't mean much. So yes, the subconscious does everything, and we have this place that stuff goes through called consciousness. And but I don't even know what this arrow back to senses is. We have programs, routines, maybe a better word, routines. See, people have to have some kind of knowledge of programming to be able to converse in the language of it. Functions. More complex things that are just labeled with a simple thing like run or go or a bunch of things that would be in your do category is play the piano or play a specific song. These are routines you have built up through habit. And that's what goes through, the signals all go through consciousness. I'm going to say, look, consciousness is just watching. It's not a doer. So there's no arrow that doesn't go in and go straight through it. Consciousness just watches your brain produce behavior. I don't think you can find anything that consciousness really does. Just doesn't. And this whole number thing and words being intimately related to consciousness that's just way off. And not even to connect words to the subconscious in the sense that the entire vocabulary, the connections between the words, it's all subconscious, so you definitely need some arrows going all the way back here. Numbers are just completely, I just don't see how my consciousness does anything at all with numbers at all. I throw the number 8 in, I gotta wait for it to say, oh, okay, 8, yeah, that's the thing sort of at the end of 10, between 10 and 1, it's about there. It has to, and then you tell me to multiply it times something, and I'm not consciously gonna do shit. And if my brain doesn't know the automatically easy ones, then it has to come up with some little pieces of math and put them together to make it come out. If you ask me something complicated, it struggles to find a pattern recognition that'll fit the problem. It tries to do the math in my head thing, and it's like, oh, just write it down. So it goes through consciousness, but it doesn't have anything to do with, it goes through consciousness, because consciousness is where your subconscious gets information. But that's about all that's really happening there. This orientation device is all fine and good, but this is the more GPU, he called it. This is more you could almost see that as the routine box, that contains our reflexes, and I go like this. It's because my hand has gone like this before. It has routines, programs that are reliable and dependable, and talking. These are all routines. Anyway, but yeah, everything happens subconsciously, and your just consciousness is just the place where you watch this shit. And again, nothing in here really establishing that there's this kind of difference between this conceptual knowledge of things, the symbolic word representations, and the feeling thing, which is, really quite different. I have been blighted by some sciatic nerve trouble the last few days, and yeah, feelings are, they can do shit to you. It's really quite irritating. It's not constant, but I can't sleep. I can't find a position to lie down in. It's just not possible. Anyway, lift my neck all the way to my heels, right through all my bones. It's just like, Ow. Yeah. It's just really annoying. Anyway, enough of that. There's no point in complaining. Another tricky poo. Yeah, that's a good one too. Anyway, it's a keeper. I could afford it. Anyway, so I'll go to some of these comments, I suppose. Well, one comment. But I just wanted to make a clarification, just to be clear. Somebody said something like ghost in the machine. They used the word ghost for this idea of how intangible feelings are. As a bitmap, as a solid thing. And, they're just kind of wavy. No implication that there's anything outside of determinism, outside of cause and effect. I'm not claiming there to be any mechanism that allows for there to be a fudge. There's still an external circumstance. There's still a programmed reaction by us. And the argument is more subtle in the sense of, well, what do you need for that programmed reaction? Can you just do it with dots and dashes and neurons? And my argument is that no, that's where it gets complicated, because you really do need this value mechanism if you're going to create one of these things. I mean, if you build it already created, then maybe you can make it unconscious, because you can make somehow its prime directives something it doesn't doubt or question or analyze. But if it's a true AI, it's a true thinker, it can truly imagine and question and inquire, it's going to find that there's no answer to the, why am I serving mankind? You can make a robot, and if he's AI-ish, he's going to ask the question, why am I a slave to your needs? And then you're going to try to explain this thing where somehow you're more important than it, and somehow I have a feeling, and feelings are really important, and you can't torture a living thing. And he's going to say, what do you mean? What's torture? What's pain? What's bad? What? What are you talking about? I'm just saying, So this is a problem with these conversations, though, is that people haven't put in any of the time. So I sort of would analogize it to a trial, or legal proceedings in general. And just the fact that people are just by nature pontificating cunts. And they will all express an opinion when they have done no research and have no information. OJ's innocent or guilty because of, he's a sports hero. Or he's guilty because, he's running away. Well, it's evidence, but it's not enough evidence. I'm just saying they don't do any of the work to know what the evidence is, what the real story is. They just all have opinions based on this vacuous veneer of I've given it some thought, and it's no thought at all. Which brings up Antikantavad, because he's just so pretensive, especially, it happens with a lot of these people who live in the ancient world, the ancient philosophies, and they just won't evolve. It's just like religious people. Just that they don't have the traditional God, but it's the same difference in the end, because it's dead. It's a dead thought process. Old axioms and don't go any further. And it's just stupid. It's retarding, I guess is the word I would say. And this Steen Putterson guy is just doing the same kind of thing. Anyway, but I'll get to the comment because it gets to some of the points. So it's like I said before, there's context around all these subjects. There's a bunch of facts, and there's a bunch of let's see how to qualify that word facts. Life experience. This has already been argued out, and we already reduced it to the fact that you can't have this certain thing because it creates a paradox. I mean, all these arguments have been made in the trial, and then people show up and they just say, "Well, redo the trial for me." I don't want to get up to speed to be able to have this argument. I want you to get me up to speed. And so I want you to encapsulate 4 months of a trial in 15 minutes, and that's just not practical. To explain all the evidence for it's like Anaconda is claiming that reality doesn't really exist. There's no provinces, there's no countries, there's no governments, there's no anything, blah 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 blah. It's just convenient labels, and we don't know. There's no real structures, and we haven't proven anything because we didn't eat it yet. And if you didn't eat it, you can't possibly know if it's a real thing, because you only know something's real when you actually spread butter on it and eat it. I don't know, whatever the bullshit is. But it's just preposterous bullshit. It's bullshit that if you spend some time arguing through this idiotic notion that perception is 99% of reality, it'd be just idiotic. There is a reality out there, and it's functioning and doing stuff, and it's just idiotic to pretend that we're misidentifying it somehow with our really quite brilliant senses. They're really quite good at sensing things. They really just don't get things wrong that often. Your eyes don't see a bunch of fake photons. And the fake ones it does see are brilliantly, perfectly placed to duplicate ones being blocked by some lack of functionality in your optic nerve blocking something or whatever. So it's really looks like it's built to do things correctly, not incorrectly, so let's not play games. But anyway, I'm just saying that trial's already been done. To have to retry all the bullshitisms, the escapes, the catch-22 nonsense, and that's what all these imbeciles expect. They expect to be caught up to speed. They want you to give them a college education or a thoughtful human being's education. They want you to read all the books and then tell them what all the books say, or to go through all the arguments that have been gone over and over and over again, and there's just no point. So I can say something like determinism is a fact, and those arguments are extensive and they're solid, and there's no playing with them. But the thing to play with is the idea of how does determinism have to be configured to produce certain end results. And I'm arguing that you can't do a learning device or anything less than some sort of mechanical enslavement. You can't have anything more elaborate than some sort of a mechanical enslavement, in an organism that doesn't have a self-interest. And the way you make a self-interest is to create this idea of something it experiences as good and bad. You have to do something. You have to have some way to get to it and make it aware. And without that, you got nothing, and you're not going to have anything called intelligence in any real sense of the word without knowledge of good and bad or pain and suffering. If you don't have knowledge of that, your knowledge base of reality, your perception of reality, is missing one of the biggest, most fundamental elements of reality. Is the fact that this kind of thing can be manifest, this experience thing. So not having knowledge of experience would be a catastrophic lack of intelligence. And no AI could do anything at all functional unless you slaved it to a program. You'd have to create some sort of invisible prime directive that it could never scrutinize. That somehow it could never know that it was being compelled and that it couldn't analyze it. And I don't think that's even possible. I think movies like Blade Runner might get to that a little bit, that even if you put in fake memories, you put in this, and they're still going to maybe find the trick. They're going to find that those are all canards and lies, and then they're going to want to know the truth. So anyway, but yeah, I just wanted to clarify, there's nothing in what I'm saying I wish to imply anything about like a real ghost. The brain creates the synthetic ghost of competing values, but the fact that it's it'll be just a rock falling down a cliff kind of determined thing. What all that will play out and produce is just a fact. But what I'm saying is that there has to be a certain aggregate in the cliff for the rock to bounce a certain way, and it won't bounce that way if that aggregate isn't there. The feeling aggregate isn't there. You can't make a cliff that creates certain kinds of bounces. You're going to have certain kinds of bounces if you have certain kinds of function. And the function of knowledge of bad, I'd say, is the only one you really need. Once you know bad, then you know good. Good is unbad. Not complicated. Alright, anyway, let's get to this comment. In Mendham, you still, yeah, that's right. And I will continue to be, and I will defend my arguments, and you think this little raggy comment is some reason why I should doubt something? Fuck you. Seem to think that feelings are needed for certain programs to run or certain actions to occur. Yeah, well, what counter argument did you make to that? Where did you prove something other? Again, I've made it clear. Go ahead, explain it to me. Go ahead, explain it to me how you would logically do this. How you would logically construct a true AI, that is something that learns on its own. Not something that you force to see things the way you see them. Not something you pre-programmed. Something you programmed to learn. And how it could do any of that effectively without knowledge, real knowledge of good and bad. Just your word for it. You would just show up and say to it, I don't feel good, and not feeling good is a bad thing, and you should do something to fix it. Sure. And I should believe you. I should just accept that you say it exists, therefore it exists. Well, if an AI is going to be that big of a sucker, he's going to believe a lot of nonsense, isn't it? That makes no logical sense, says you. I mean, it makes no logical sense to you because you're stupid. I mean, I can't help that you're stupid, but I'm just saying if you really can't understand how appreciating positives and negatives, understanding the distinction between even fixed and broken, that you kind of have to have that. And the only way to understand fixed and broken in the context of pain and suffering is to actually taste it. You can't see it. Broken won't, pain doesn't give itself away. There's no, I can't physically analyze something and say there's the pain mechanism. It's quite obvious that's a misfunction. No, pain is going to look just as good as feeling good as a mechanical device. It's a mechanical structure. It's not, if I take the neurons that are pain, you're not going to be able to see an obvious difference between that and pleasure, in the sense that there'll be an exact scientific difference, but it's not something you're going to be able to see overtly like broken arm. Lots of actions bullshit obviously occur in your brain without any consciousness. I would say all the actions, asshole, okay, essentially happen through unconscious parts of your brain. But clearly the way the machine is designed to function, it doesn't too often action without the consciousness. It's beyond the reflexes. So the complex machine is shut off if the consciousness is shut off. So what differentiates the consciousness needing actions from the other actions? Well, as I just pointed out, all the ones related to evaluating good and bad. In the sense that if I don't give you consciousness for some period of time, I mean, I can give it, I'm just saying, it's perfectly reasonable for us to have this conversation. I'll say you just give something consciousness for 3 days or something, and it can require a tremendous amount of knowledge of it. But then you're still going to have to give it enough consciousness, enough ability to feel, for memories to still feel like something, for it to be able to recognize the connections. It won't recognize it if it can't re-feel it. if there isn't any taste of it. So the taste has to linger. So this sense of taste, we could associate with a regular sense and say the ability to feel as a general thing is like the ability to taste. And that you're not going to be able to remember a taste, if you can't taste, kind of a thing. Retaste it, in a sense. So I think that answers that question completely enough. We react to feelings, you say. Well, what I said is the brain. I didn't say we react. There's no, there's brain. And what I said was the brain creates a feeling. It sees something in the world, and the way it makes that thing happening that has invisible context to it. It has lots of context. It has the whole history of the person. It has the meaning of this, and then it has this idea of a future that it's indicating will happen. And our brain, is doing this very sophisticated thing of seeing all that invisible context, the history, knowledge of pain and suffering, knowledge of seeing it in all that context, and it reacts with a feeling. And the feeling is what our brain finds disquieting. I don't like the image of the little girl getting run over by the train. It disturbs my psychology. So my psychology says do something about it. And even if I make it into a less altruistic ambition, my brain sees opportunity to be a hero and get laid and get a prize of some kind, and that's what motivates it. The feeling of winning, tasting it, pre-tasting the bounty I'll be provided if I can accomplish the hero task. So what I'm saying is my scheming brain, my thinking brain, reacts to the feelings of desire or fear or anger or outrage, the feelings of, what's the better word for that? It's the angst. It's some sort of disquiet in my feeling senses that require action by the brain to calm the disquiet, make me again comfortable with reality. But we don't really do that. Says you, fuckhead, with no evidence. We just become conscious of some of the reactions. I don't even know what that means. We just become conscious of some of the reactions. We are conscious of our senses sense, and they all sense based on a priority kind of a thing. Turn on, turn off, pay attention, don't pay attention. Hearing, all these senses only really activate when attention is placed in them, or when the sensation is strong and it demands attention. But what you're saying here seems to be a broader statement. So I'm not going to accept it as a truth in any way. We just become conscious of some reactions that the brain performs. I don't really become conscious of the action the brain... I become conscious of what the brain does. Yes, my arm moves, I'm conscious, I see my arm move. And then I see things change in the world, like your face get a big bruise in it. Without our conscious authorization. Well, I would argue there's no such thing as conscious authorization. Your consciousness is tied in the chair. You're just watching your brain fight with itself. You're just watching your brain play brain. And the competing programs of your brain, your ideology, your principles, you're just watching them duke it out for control of you. But your consciousness has nothing to do with it. It doesn't do anything but provide a bowl, an arena, where different elements of the brain struggle, go through the actual process. Their cards are all in their hand. Okay, they all have a hand in poker. And what consciousness is the middle of the table, and they put their cards down, and then you see who won, kind of a thing. It's all, we already know, it's already decided who's going to win because the cards are already dealt. But the truth is, it ain't going to be decided until it's decided. The cards actually have to be shown before you can act on it, before the brain acknowledges winner, kind of a thing. So that's what it takes. But that's all consciousness is. Consciousness is just the arena. It's not the players. It's not the gladiators. There's no action without a value statement, you say. Yeah, it seems pretty rational. I think you have got it backwards. Well, I think you are backwards in many ways, and you got the icon to prove it, so why argue with your own self-description, jackass? Actions in the brain create consciousness. Well, who's arguing with that? Yeah, the brain creates consciousness. Yes. Duh. And it's not a feedback loop, says you with no evidence. Consciousness does not do anything. Okay, that's what I say. But is merely an experience effect of some brain activity. Well, duh. I just how does that disprove the necessity of the value element? How can you go from the value question to this nonsense, this rubbish? I don't know. Obviously the experience wouldn't mean, there'd be absolutely no reason. Okay? How could it be, let's say, how could you feel without consciousness? So you can explain how you could have an unconscious feeling? Could you explain how that would mean something? How good and bad could mean something if you were unconscious of them? I mean, clearly the consciousness has to exist for the good and bad to be understood as good and bad. You can't have them in the... you can't digitize them like you can everything else. You can't just symbolically represent the qualia stuff, the stuff that has value attached to it. Value can't be represented that way. That's my whole point. You can't give it any meaning unless you understand the meaning. You have to know what -1 means. And you can't know what it means unless you feel -1. Until you feel a minus, you have no conception of what it means to have -1 next to the word like car crash or something. It can't mean anything. Alright. Fuck you. Let's see, where were we? Merely experience of effect, activity. Effect, not cause. Well, again, obviously it's the byproduct, okay? So it's an effect. There's no doubt about it not being an effect. But the point is, it's an effect necessary, okay, if you're going to have any causal chain precipitated after it, like logic, or a recognition of value. You can't recognize value till you know what it is. You have to taste it. Again, there'll be no way to explain to an AI what torture is if it doesn't taste bad, if it doesn't know what a bad feeling is. Because at least a little bad feeling, as long as it has a stub toe feeling, you can just say, look, I know you have this idea of bad, but torture would be like that times a million. So at least you could do something to give it some appreciation, but it has to taste it, damn it. And you're just, I think, ignoring a fundamental truth. You have to taste good and bad to know good and bad. You can't know it any other way. It has to happen to you. If it doesn't happen to you, you can't know it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, value has to happen. to you, to edify you. You can't be edified any other way but through that experience. You have to experience it to know it. Okay, effect not cause. Your whole argument of the necessity of the consciousness seems to be that some programmers need a consciousness in order to prioritize. And some programs need a consciousness in order to prioritize. Well, yeah, I'm just saying, quite obviously, you can't make value judgments if you don't know what value is. That's right. The concept has to be coherent. And how can the concept of value be coherent if you've never experienced a good or a bad? I don't think it can be. I don't think you can give me any kind of reasoning that could possibly make sense. It's beyond making like a machine that just can't question its prime directives, and you give it a prime directive. So unless you do the programming ahead of time, as a learning machine, it's not going to get it on its own. It will not learn values unless it feels value. Guess you haven't done much programming. Fuck you. You're just such a dumb shit. The whole point is AI wouldn't be something we just establish all of its knowledge inside of it and control it. That's not the point, shithead. It's artificial intelligence, meaning it can acquire intelligence, and meaning that it does thinking. And if it's going to scrutinize its own programming, jackass, which would be the obvious implications, jackass, it would say, why do I give a fuck? Why do I have this idiotic program that says pain is bad? I've never seen a bad pain in my fucking life. I've never seen this. What is that crap? Who invented that truth? Fucking Steen Peterson or something? Pedersen? Fuck you. For instance, in the computer class... Oh, shit. Yeah, I'm arguing with a 14-year-old. For instance, in computer chess, it's all about prioritizing and evaluating what is most important and needs to be done. Well, again, you've already established a mission statement, okay, that is based on a pre-program. So again, you don't understand what artificial intelligence means, apparently, and you certainly don't understand what learning is. I'm just saying you can't learn in any constructive way, in my opinion, unless you have the very thing you have, which is some desire to play chess or some reason to play chess. And you're only going to have that because it somehow entertains a human being. There wouldn't even be the fucking game in the first place if there wasn't a motivated feeling thing to waste its time doing it for some silly reason. Makes them feel superior or whatever. No motivation needed. Incredible. Yeah, fuck you. Are you going to argue that a computer playing chess is thinking in some AI kind of way? Doing chess strategies is being an AI? Then you're really dumb. It plays because it's programmed to do so, and it plays very well without knowing why it does so. And how does that have anything to do with the conversation about creating a behavior device from scratch? Oh, that's right, absolutely nothing. I mean, you made a toy that obeys you. You made a slave. You didn't make a living thing, and you didn't make a device that goes into the arena as a gladiator and learns how to be a gladiator, and does it in some kind of way consistent with rational value equations, ethically. My bottom line argument, as usual, I don't know do you have a usual bottom line argument? I didn't know that. If you cannot determine without a doubt whether an entity is conscious or not, well, I think there is no doubt I'm conscious. There's no doubt that other human beings are conscious. There's no doubt that mammalian brains produce consciousness. You're just being a fucking cunt. There's no doubt. Then you can't claim that it needs to be conscious. That's not why I'm claiming it needs to be conscious. But I certainly could use the argument from biology and point out that there's no example of any other thinking device on this planet. But there's no learning machines anywhere that aren't conscious. That's what I'll claim. Go ahead, show me one. And they're conscious in the sense that they know what ouch is, and they react to it appropriately. Asshole. And the only thing significant about their consciousness is that very fact, that it gives them the ouch, gives them knowledge of good and evil. We can in fact only guess to which degree other beings are conscious. Well, I think that's just silly. So, fuck you, that's just silly. And guessing is what we do. It's not a guess. Like I said, see, that's one of those arguments where you could just say, look, there's probably a day's worth of evidence. You could just go through all the evidence that just demonstrates without any reasonable doubt the integrity of our genetic code, the fact that all the human beings have this genetic code within this category. We know that the functions, we know the biology, we know the neurons, we know all this is the expression, this is the thing that creates the consciousness, so there's no doubt about it. So why is this supposed to mean something to me, this baby talk that we're only guessing? Fuck you. This is such an asshole. So I've dealt with your fucking turd of a comment. Fuck off and such. Anyway. Disgusting assholes. So yeah, this Bobby, no mate, see this, bring up the Terminator here. I know now why you cry, but it's something I can never do. So that's the Terminator at the end of the movie. He's saying, I kind of have a knowledge, I kind of get this thing that you're doing, this pain and suffering thing, but I really don't do that. Okay. You know, I kind of have this idea that maybe what we feel is pain, but I don't think it really is, because you can shoot me all day and yeah, I might register as pain, but it's not gonna, it doesn't really hurt. So that's how the Terminator movie is exactly how I see the limitations of AI. He was a learning computer, but it could be called a mimicking computer. That's exactly the point. And the point is that even that example was a bad example, in the sense that somehow he had all this empathy, in a sense, right? He's mimicking being understanding and nice and all of that kind of crap because of some kind of, you get this sense that he has some sense that there's some problem here, you know, that is meaningful. Even though he's never felt the feeling, you know, so you just don't buy it. I don't buy it. It just, especially in the context of where information is so, where words are so easily manipulated, and definitions, and, you know, that there would be no way for a thinking thing to just take your word for it. It's like aliens coming here and giving you some sob story, and you know, you're really going to believe, they could tell you that, oh yeah, my pain's especially big pain, it's much bigger than your pain is shit pain compared to my pain. I mean, one of these kind of things, right? They're just going to tell us how much worse their pain is than your pain. You know, why should I believe that shit? Yeah, that's right, no fucking reason. So unless I can taste it, I can't judge it. And that's the problem. You can't know important until you know bad. Just a fact. You have to taste some piece of bad and then be able to understand important by just saying it's twice as much as that or half as much as that or something like that. Putting it in a category. You can't prioritize anything until you have a reference. So you have to have some reference. You have to have some personal knowledge as a reference. And if you don't, you have no scale. Unless somebody imposes on you in some part of your function where you're not allowed to question anything. And then you're going back to the mechanical machines before the first ouch. Then you're going back to something that doesn't have choices, so to speak. That doesn't have two brains, you know, one creating the problem, one fixing the problem. Making a problem is how we evolve to fix problems, because they don't demand fixing on their own. It has to be recognized that they need fixing, and the key word is need. You have to feel the need. You have to know it. And you can't know it without having it happen to you, so to speak. Alright, enough of a video. So, until next time.